Hello and welcome. My name is Sabrina Rising. I'm a spiritual mentor and a psychic medium. And if you're new to this channel, then I hope you enjoy some of the content here. It's all focused on spirituality, personal development, self healing, and ultimately coming online with our intuitive gifts so that we can create a life that we love. Today's video is a little bit different. I'm going to sort of interrupt our regularly scheduled woo content, if you will, to talk about something very near and dear to my heart, something that is foundational to anyone on a journey of mental health and physical wellness. I want to talk about how to overcome the prison of what we refer to as eating disorder. Okay. And so this is something that I struggled with for almost 2 decades of my life. I started very young in my life. Around the age of 14 or 15 years old, I developed anorexia, and that turned into bulimia, which turned into all kinds of, self-destructive ways of coping. It really sort of set the stage for addiction and drugs and cigarettes and alcohol and you name it. So I want to talk about this topic because it's so important to address it. If you are someone who is on a healing journey, or if you need to be on a healing journey and you feel like there's just no resources out there for you, I feel really called to share my personal story and how I overcame eating disorder behavior and all of my self-destructive behaviors, and I found inner peace. And if I can do it, you can do it too. Okay. Now, I'm not a medical doctor. Video is not meant to replace the advice of your physician or your psychiatrist or your psychologist or whoever it is that you're working with. Depending on the severity of your case and how much you're struggling, you may need outside help, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. We don't heal alone. It's impossible to heal alone. We need to lean into others and to develop community and to rely on these resources in order to help lead us out of suffering. Okay. That doesn't mean that we're powerless. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We each have our own innate power that we simply must tap into in order to take the steps that are necessary. And so much power is required to move out of eating disorder behavior, especially if you've been struggling for a really long time. Okay. Now, for me, I can tell you my personal story, and perhaps you can relate to this. You don't necessarily have to have had a traumatic childhood. Okay. That's not true for everybody, but there is there is a lot of truth and meaning to the connection to your relationship with mother. Okay. And I have another video called How to Heal the Mother Wound. So I recommend that you watch that as well. Healing the relationship with mother for me was about coming to terms with my body, my femininity, my identity, my ways of coping, how I nurture myself. And the relationship to food is nestled right in there. Okay. It is so tightly interwoven with all of our issues when it comes to relationship with mom. Okay. So I invite you to take a look at that sort of as an additional support to getting the help you need to overcome your eating disorder behavior. Okay. What we're referring to as eating disorder behavior. I also want to mention that I have an eating disorder is basically declaring an identity. Okay. And this is not who you are. It's simply a behavior that you are participating in. I participated in for a very long time that allowed me to cope in a way that gave me some kind of immediate relief, but also caused me a tremendous amount of difficulty, a tremendous amount of emotional difficulty and physical complications as well. Okay. So I just want to start from the beginning. My personal story is I started to restrict food because it was my way of controlling my environment. Okay, I grew up in an environment that was very chaotic, very out of control, and it was the only thing I had that was mine. It was my way of rejecting the environment that I was in, rejecting what I was being given. I mean, there's so much symbolism around the rejection of food. It could be the rejection of mother, the rejection of the environment you're in, the willingness to be fully integrated in your environment, especially if you feel like you don't belong or you feel like you're outcasted in your early childhood environment. And especially if you're in an environment that was very overbearing like mine was, where, I didn't really get to make a lot of my own decisions as a young teenager. And so the eating disorder behavior was my way of controlling. It was my way of feeling powerful. Okay. And it quickly snowballed into my way of coping with uncomfortable emotions. I didn't have a set of tools to regulate my nervous system, to deal with my uncomfortable feelings. I didn't have an outlet for what I was experiencing. I couldn't name my feelings. I couldn't contextualize them. And so I developed this pattern of behavior that kept me very restricted and very tight, and very sort of suppressed. And at the same time, there was this sense of outperforming myself. Every day I would be obsessed with my weight. I'd be obsessed with how my clothes fit, or obsessed with my image. I wanted to essentially feel weightless, because I was so burdened with heavy, unresolved emotions, that this desire to simply be invisible was stronger than me. It was bigger than what I had bargained for when I started this sort of restrictive way of operating. It was really just about rebellion for me and control, and then it became something much bigger than I could ever possibly imagine. It started to control me, and so my journey began with, as I mentioned, with anorexia. And of course, I had a lot of pressure from my environment, to eat and to eat more. And of course, there was a lot of concern around how thin I was. And maybe this is something you can relate to as well, as sort of having to sort of fend off other people's judgments, and having to defend your case, and hide your weight and your body image. Becomes a source of shame, right? And so I started to eat just to appease my family members and my environment. And I went in completely the other extreme, where I started to participate in bulimia and other ways to relieve myself. I started to restrict in hiding. Okay. And the bulimia itself energetically is another way of rejecting your environment as well. So we can be restricting, or we can be purging. In all cases, when it comes to eating disorder behavior, we are literally rejecting the things that we're being forced to digest, to assimilate, that we feel don't really belong to us. Okay. And you might be using food to cope emotionally. I certainly did that, especially with the bulimia behavior. I used food to soothe my nervous system. I used it to fill a void. I used it to keep me company. I used it to, it was the pseudo love experience of love that I was indulging in, that ultimately made me sick. It made me very, very ill, and I had a lot of physical complications as a result of it. Okay, and it was a very intense relationship with food that I had. It really was a central point of my life for many, many years. And so the reason this is so important for me, as far as the catalyst to my healing journey, is because we can't jump into esoteric concepts or intuitive concepts or healing concepts, or I'm a channel and a medium and a facilitator of inner peace, and I couldn't come online with any of these gifts if I didn't take the steps to heal my body and ultimately heal my relationship with food, which really boiled down to just learning to love and accept myself exactly as I was. Okay, so there's some fundamental elements here that are necessary for everybody who is struggling with eating disorder behavior and who wants to come out of this hell that you're living. Okay. First of all, just acknowledging that these are strategies that you implemented as a means of coping, right? Because you lack the coping skills to really process your uncomfortable emotions. Perhaps you lack the voice to create the boundaries that are necessary in your life, or you lack the courage and the conviction to remove yourself from toxic situations. And so the eating disorder becomes the secret thing that you do in order to get your own needs met. Okay, so this is I advocate for this in all of my videos. It's really important to advocate for ourselves and to ask to get our needs met, whether it's in a home situation or a relationship situation or a work situation. It's really important to learn how to embody our self-worth. Okay, so if you had a childhood experience that was riddled with shame and criticism and a lack of nurturing, disconnection from parents, perhaps you felt unwanted or unloved, or perhaps you felt the pressure to be perfect, the pressure to perform in a certain way, whatever your wiring was. Okay, the way that you're coping with these feelings of deep shame and low self-worth eventually will take your life. Okay, it's not a matter of when, and it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. All right, so I just want to emphasize how important it is to really take personal responsibility for the quality of your health, and to trust that you can heal yourself. Okay, if I can do it, anybody can. All right. So it went on this way with me for many, many years. I hid this issue. I became an expert at hiding this issue. I tried to be in relationships. I tried to have a career. I tried to do all kinds of things. And I had some measure of success, but I never had freedom. I never had, inner peace because I was always in this state of turmoil internally. Okay. And I couldn't relax around food. I couldn't be around other people around food. I mean, food is, it can be such a social a thing, is a component of being social and interacting with others, is sharing food, right? And ultimately, I didn't know how to love and nourish my body, and I was completely disconnected from my body's own natural rhythms and my body's signals. And if you're struggling with eating disorder behavior, you can relate to what I'm saying. Okay, so it's very important that the first step to coming out of eating disorder behavior is a decision. You need to make a decision that you don't want to live this way anymore. Okay. And it's possible, even after decades of patterning in the brain and all the neural pathways that have been established as a result of coping in a particular way. You are unconsciously driven to reach for the food or to restrict the food or to purge the food, whatever it is that you're doing with your relationship with food, with enough courage and willingness and determination, we can overcome this patterning and really surrender into a process of healing our bodies and trusting that as we allow nature to take over, the body's wisdom will actually start to heal and start to recalibrate itself. One of the biggest fears I had when I was coming out of eating disorder behavior was that, and this is very, very normal, is that your body is just going to balloon into a, unrecognizable size, or that, you're going to completely lose control of that sense of security and that sense of perfectionism like I had, and none of that is true. These are just limiting beliefs. They're conditioned fears. When we align with nature and we allow ourselves to really get curious about our body's natural rhythms and what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and how good it feels to take good care of ourselves, the body follows suit. Right. So these loving thoughts will actually change your cellular configuration, if you will, and your body will start to emanate this love. It will start to heal itself. Okay. And this is what I did. I went on a healing journey. Of course, I started practicing, very gentle, very brief, very simple mindfulness practices. I started practicing meditation and breath work, and I went into primal release work so I could really release the emotions that were trapped in my body. And it was being in the presence of unconditionally loving space, in support groups, in circles, with mentors, that I learned to embody this energy of unconditional love for myself. And it took baby steps. And it took enough of this energy building up inside of me to bring me out of shame, so that I could find the courage to really surrender food and surrender the relationship I had to food and surrender whatever my body was going to look like. I remember the time when I decided that I wasn't going to eat in order to look a certain way, but I was going to eat the way I wanted to eat, the way I felt was normal to eat, the way I felt my body wanted me to eat. And I would just accept whatever I looked like as a result of doing that on a day in and day out basis. And that's exactly what happened. I let go of trying to manipulate outcomes and force circumstances and create a self-image that was completely inauthentic to me. It became more important to me to feel, to heal, and to be real about, with who I was and what I wanted, what my desires were, and how I wanted to express myself in the world. And that includes how I wanted to eat, how I wanted to nurture myself. And so it was literally one meal at a time. I don't want you to think it's like this big thing that you need to do. You don't need to dive in and let it all go. Just one meal at a time, doing some deep diaphragmatic breathing, allowing yourself to relax, to regulate your nervous system, and really having that intention to trust your body's ability to digest food. When you change your belief system, you change every cell in your body, as I said multiple times. And so I started to believe that the food was there to nourish me, and I started to relax around it. And I gave myself, some parameters around what a normal meal looks like. And I put myself on a regular eating schedule. It's important to create structure. You don't need that forever, but it's important to create structure because when you're coming out of eating disorder behavior, you're literally reparenting yourself. So you're teaching yourself how to eat. You're teaching yourself how to listen to your body's natural rhythms, the kind of thing that people that don't struggle with this issue take for granted, right? You just eat when you're hungry and you stop when you're full. And when your wires are completely crossed because you've been manipulating this natural internal response for so long, it takes time to learn how to tune in again and to trust yourself. Coming out of eating disorder behavior is an exercise in trust and surrender. And you have to trust and surrender something that's much bigger than you. We're talking about natural intelligence, universal intelligence, nature's natural rhythms. And once you align with nature's natural rhythms, your body starts to digest, it starts to process food, it starts to regulate, it starts to come alive, right? It starts to heal itself. Just like, in the example of someone who's quitting drinking, someone who's been abusing alcohol for a very long time can have, elevated liver enzymes, for example, and with enough abstinence, the liver can regenerate itself, right? The enzymes go back to normal. Every cell in your body is designed to heal itself. In fact, every cell in your body is currently, even as you're watching this video, fighting to harmonize with its environment. And so we limit our ability to be healthy by imposing limiting beliefs, fears, doubt, shame, guilt, all the feelings you don't want to feel that drive you to eat and to eat more and to eat again and rinse and repeat. Part of the conditioning is that we feel so ashamed of who we are and so unworthy of love that we repeat these behaviors so that we can continue to experience more shame and unworthiness because this is all we know, right? And so it takes an infusion of unconditional love, a consciousness that is more powerful than the one that you're operating in order to lift you out of this place. And you can't do that alone. You need a guide, a mentor, a group, some kind of support that will introduce this unconditionally loving, compassionate energy into your life so that you can start to slowly embody that. It's in the embodiment of unconditional love for self that we start to become less drawn to these self-destructive behaviors. We start to notice like, oh, I don't want to hurt myself, or oh, I would rather do something kind for myself, or I don't really want to do this behavior anymore because it's painful. I don't want to suffer anymore, right? And so it's kind of like you're filling up your cup with unconditional love, and out goes the shame and the guilt and the fear and the tendency to self-destruct. Okay. And this is how it went for me. Slowly, one meal at a time, I got all of my willingness and all of my courage together to just accept and even just try it as an experiment. Like, let me just accept what my body will do if I start to trust food and I give up this pattern of behavior. Okay. There are several things that come into play when you're coming out of this type of self-destructive pattern. It can be karmic. It can be as a result of just being ready, finding the courage, the willingness, having the right support. Perhaps you're just listening to this video, or you found other resources that really just all of a sudden you hear something and the light comes on. Okay. But if this is your moment and you're ready, I want you to know that you can do this. You can find the courage within you to really set that intention one meal at a time, and don't strive for perfection. Simply go for progress. Be willing to accept progress one day at a time so that you can learn to really, really love yourself and love your body. Okay. It's also good to get some education around, healthy foods and making sure you're staying away from processed foods and refined sugars and carbohydrates and things that are loaded up with, empty calories that don't really give your body the nutrients that it needs. When you start to eat whole foods embodied with, infused with unconditional love for yourself, that magic starts to happen on a physical level. And slowly but surely, you will come out of this cycle just like I did, and you'll never look back. Not because that behavior isn't available to you, but because of where you are in your level of consciousness. It doesn't even cross your mind to want to harm yourself in that way. At least that's how it went for me, and in this shifting of consciousness, I can remember the experience of what it was like to suffer, to feel trapped, to feel hopeless, and to feel like I was never going to get better. And all of the inner work that I had to do to bring me into this new space of not ever imagining, my life that way. Sort of, it feels like a distant memory. And so you can heal. Everyone can heal, and it's available to you if you're willing to do the work. Okay. So my suggestion is that you start with small steps. Start with a support group, some container, some kind of space where you can be held in the energy of unconditional love, and start talking about your problem, because part of the shame is keeping it a secret. So start talking about your struggles, start talking about, what it's like for you, and really find the courage to set that intention. And it's for me, I had a sort of a dialogue with God, and I was like, okay, we're going to do this together, and this doesn't have to be the case for you, but I would suggest strongly that you create a relationship with something bigger than you. It can be nature, it can be universe, whatever word, whatever context works for you. To me, these are all synonyms of each other. But I had this connection with God, and I said, okay, we're going to do this together, because I couldn't go on living that way. So I really didn't have any other alternative. And sometimes that is the point of ripeness, right? That's that point where we get to where, when we're willing to do whatever it takes, that's when this energetic opening gets created, and we're able to step into our full self-healing power. And we all have the power to do it. And this was such an important, pivotal part of my journey, which is why I felt so moved to share today for anybody that might be struggling. It was through healing my relationship with my body that I learned to heal my gut, that I learned to listen to my intuition, that I learned to trust my body's signals, and that I learned to develop all of my other gifts that I practice professionally now on a regular basis. And I've helped thousands of young women over the years recover from eating disorder behavior, not with meal plans and structures and strict rules and, in a sort of a conveyor belt process. It's a cookie cutter process that, well, it's not one size fits all. Okay. But through deep healing and learning how to sit in the discomfort of your emotions, and learning how to bring in unconditional love and really embody that as a way of operating, so that these self-destructive behaviors kind of fall off you. They fall off you because you're not attracted to them anymore. It's impossible for these behaviors to have any kind of power over this new level of consciousness that I invite you to embody. And I hope my story is a source of hope and strength for anyone who's struggling. If this was helpful, please leave a comment. You can always subscribe and, reach out to me, ask questions. I would love to help you come out of this suffering and find lasting inner peace. Be well.